5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition, liftoff.
You are listening to Stay Tuned El Paso with Victor Cruz and Charlie Moreno.
The best thing to happen to El Paso ever.
The greatest thing that's ever happened to me.
I just realized you're using a soundboard for all that. I thought you had everything already produced as a full intro.
No, this is the work I put in. It's quality.
I like it. You like your little soundboard. I'm surprised.
I used to have one already laid out and stuff, but I like to be able to change the music and all that stuff. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, you could almost work in radio. You know that? You really could. With your little hot buttons and soundboards. Pew, pew, pew. Lasers and fart noises. You're listening to... There it is. Stay tuned, El Paso. Victor Cruz, Charlie Moreno, Erica's with us as well. So now explain to me...
That's Erica on my right, and you're Victor.
On the left.
I'm Charlie.
And in front of you is Barry. We'll get to Barry here in just a few moments.
Barry Peterson. We're going to be talking about gun control and gun rights and anything that falls into any of those categories.
Because as we're recording, there was yet another mass shooting. And I don't want to say school shooting, because it's a mass shooting.
Let's just not say shooting.
No, let's not. There was an incident.
There was another mass.
There was another. There was another.
People
occurrence.
died. There's another mass.
I guess. Sure, that's no joke.
Thoughts and prayers, y'all. Thoughts and prayers.
That's a way to spin it.
But as we recorded this, we had a guest previously, so this is going to happen before the next guest.
Yeah, this episode will air. Will go out tonight, which is Sunday, the 18th. And then the one we recorded earlier will be out next week.
Oh, God, here goes this one again.
Yeah.
Here comes the cough.
No.
I know. I can't. I'm sorry. It's the last of it.
Of what?
I
don't know. I don't know what it is.
I need to put a mute button on his.
He's got the allergy.
I don't know. It was allergies. I don't know. Last Sunday was horrible. Thank God we didn't record last Sunday.
Next week, you just wear a mask the entire episode.
I'm not showing up. I'm just not showing up.
You kind of live here.
Well, you're not showing up then. I'm not
We'll
answering
do it on
the door.
Skype.
So, you know me with the purpose of having the podcast and trying to find a resolution, resolve something, find a solution. We have to have experts in something that we're talking about, my feeling. So, Erica, as the medical expert, what's wrong with me? Jesus.
You, sir, have the allergy.
Okay, but is it the
You have
flu?
cooties.
Do I have? Yeah.
Fucking cooties.
I think I've ran through the gamut of everything I could get. I think I even had bronchitis, but I apparently did not have time for it. I had
sickle cell.
I had bronchitis.
You have a urinary tract infection.
I checked my schedule and did not have time for it. So it's not
Nobody got
bronchitis.
time for that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
What's the deal with this new strain, this new round, this new... And I'm not even calling it the flu. It's like crud going on right now.
It is crud. It's
like
disgusting.
AZ flu.
Yeah.
It's actually,
it just won't stop.
The highest, the ones that I've seen more commonly are A and B. Those are the strains that we've been seeing and diagnosing the most.
Okay, so explain what is A and B. What is it?
I think those are just the most prevalent strains out right now.
Is that just their names? The A flu, the B flu? This is what we're getting this year?
We don't want to assume gender or anything. So
well, no.
A and B.
Yes.
Should I be worried about
A and B?
Should I be worried about D and E?
What if B wants to identify as E?
There's a lot of people who do have worries about the D.
Well,
So
D is
you might want to be careful there. You might want to keep it together.
If it's oozing, get it checked.
Yes, please do.
Well, then let me just say, my God, I hope I don't get the D.
The ERs are acceptable places to go check the oozing D.
I wouldn't know where to put the D if I got it.
Oh, man. You got this is another episode altogether.
I wouldn't know where to. By the way, did I mention to you guys? Have you guys caught on? I don't think we've mentioned it on the pod. This is completely separating from anything we're talking about. But have you guys noticed I've stopped cussing?
No.
Have you noticed that I've tried taking... Really? Well, what the hell?
Fuck it.
Well, shit.
Is that for Lent or what?
No, I just... maybe that'd be for another topic, another podcast.
When we're really in need of material.
Yeah, we got an hour to kill.
We're scouring the bottom of the barrel.
I just figured, and Charlie, again, something that we've talked about before, but it's not an issue of becoming a better person or becoming a holier person or none of that, because you guys know I'm far from that. Yeah, I posted it a while back.
Oh,
yes,
that's still a thing?
Yeah,
yes,
it's still happening.
going on.
I haven't stopped.
I thought that trend had ended already.
I think Charlie and I cuss enough for all three of us, so I guess that's why we didn't
covered.
notice.
Yeah, I know. You guys are helping me out with what. So it's just something that I've tried to do to see if I can do it. It's almost a social experiment. And the one thing that I've noticed, not cursing, and I've slipped here and there. I've said a couple of words, especially at work, doing some stuff. And you say it. I mean, that happens.
Work.
But social, and I guess there's really a term for it, social cursing. I've really tried to cut back on that. And the one thing I've noticed is people cuss a lot.
Oh, yeah.
You're
People,
welcome.
there's a lot of wow.
But there are studies that show that cussing, using foul language, actually is a sign of intelligence.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So you think you're holding yourself back now?
Oh, what?
You want to reassess your IQ there?
What's
Lucy righty tight.
what's the study?
What are we studying?
I've actually, and it's stressing my brain a little bit trying to find another word for when I want to say something.
See, here's the thing, though. I can find several cuss words for that one emotion.
I know, exactly. And that's I sound like freaking Ned Flanders, Hi, diddly doodly, ow, or whatever.
My God, are you still talking?
Yeah, see, that. So, but this flu thing, hey, I got to tell you, this flu thing, huh?
Yeah, back to the
I
flu
gotta tell
and
you.
this allergy and whatever I've got.
It really hit me hard, whatever the
scurvy.
strain is.
It's scurvy.
It's scurvy. I
got
need more
scurvy.
fruit.
You got scurvy,
Not enough-
measles, and shingles, and sickle cell,
It
and
was bad enough. Thought it was bad enough with the heart attack last year. Now
Oh,
I got
man.
scurvy.
See? You see what happens? They cut you open, everything else jumps in.
There's a part of me that
That believes
tinfoil-
that.
Yeah, there's a part of me that
you
actually
think
thinks that
it came from that.
something. The
You had
hospitals are
heart
dirty.
surgery, and they just shoved germs in there.
Yeah.
I mean, you've probably got MRSA now, but let's not go there.
Here's the Seinfeld reference.
Swine flu.
Oh, God.
Here's the Seinfeld
Actually, swine
reference.
flu is supposed to be influenza A.
Oh, really?
It was at one point, but then they changed these things around all
bird
the time.
flu.
It was H1N1.
What's this year?
Influenza
Chinese
A.
So
year?
again, so is that
So
is that
I
still
don't
a thing?
I
Is
don't
that
even know what the hell is which. I just know it's flu A, flu B. That's what we keep getting.
it's the dumbing down of America?
Because
We went
we've
from
got to use
H1N1.
letters. We've got to use letters now. Just one simple letter, and that's
So,
it.
how dangerous is this flu now? Because I hear more fatalities from it, and we've had a few in El Paso.
Yes.
So,
There's articles all over Yahoo about it.
I'm a man of science. I love science, and
I only believe in science.
yeah. But what's going on then? Is it true that it's people that have pre-existing conditions,
Are
poor
more
health?
prone to actually succumbing to it.
Okay.
As
and
a
that's
finality.
with pretty much anything, right? With any
Yes.
viral infection I mean, that's
anything.
It is with anything.
You're
And
sick. You're
and
going to get sicker.
if you're fat, you're more likely to get hit by a car crossing the street.
because you take up more
That's-
space. I mean,
that's
it's just
physics.
relational. Yes,
Science and physics.
It's strictly
See,
relational.
You can learn from Stay Tuned El Paso.
It's a
Indeed.
very educational show.
Yes.
Nice. Barry, you missed that. He took his headphones out. It was another fart noise.
It's loud enough where he.
Oh, he's got no sound.
You have
he
no
gotta-
sound?
No sound in here. Yeah.
Are you
Well,
serious?
no wonder he's not laughing at the fart jokes.
Can you hear now?
He can appreciate a good fart joke now and then.
Make,
all
there's
crackly.
probably a second.
Did we
make sure-
unplug something?
Make sure that one is plugged in.
Pushed, plugged.
Okay, technical
Yeah.
difficulties.
Oh, it's got a button here I got to push.
Well, that's for
that's
the
the
microphone.
safety.
That's the microphone. That's for like a.
Make sure your headphone safety is off.
I can hear it if I hold this button down.
Really?
Wow.
Okay.
Oh, no,
Well,
it went away.
okay.
Well, then don't do that.
Here, you can use my headphones, but they're.
They're sweaty now.
Are they sweaty? Yeah.
I mean, I can hear you guys
Sweaty.
from here.
Okay. You don't need
You
to.
don't-
Yeah,
he doesn't need to hear the sound effects of the farts.
Oh, well, imagine a fart, and I'll just point at you when it
We
happens.
have some audio that I'm gonna play later, and I'll make it so where he can hear it, but it's not really.
Well, let's quickly back into the flu.
Yes.
So all these stories that we're hearing about a young child who did not get the flu vaccination and then they end up unfortunately passing away. I mean, should people still be afraid of the flu shot? Does the flu shot work? Am I going to get the flu when I get the flu shot? Blah, 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 blah.
Well,
Take it away.
A lot of the reports have been coming out saying that this last round of flu shots was ineffective. What they do is they'll test it out in Australia and they kind of go off of whatever flu is most rampant out there. They use that as a basis to come and bring the vaccine out here to the States, and that's how they go about vaccinating everyone. That strain that they found in Australia didn't make it to the States, and instead we got A and B. Whatever was over there, I don't know. I guess that was C and D.
Australia, you got the
They got the D.
They got the D.
They got the D.
So
we got the D. We got the D. We got
they, whatever flu they had,
So that's why it was just rendered ineffective
we got the
here.
and so that flu shot that we have now
So I guess we
has
got
nothing to do with.
I guess we got the vaccines for the D, and we got flu A and B. But
I'm so confused. You're just gonna
it's
make me cuss.
weird.
I'm just gonna. It's just
Now
gonna,
this is making it interesting.
This is gonna break me now.
Sweet. I'm making that my mission.
Oh, nice. I appreciate that.
No, but I mean, in all seriousness, that one particular case with that kid, I haven't read more into it.
It's a local case?
No.
I
Like
can't
was the
remember.
one is that the one I shared with you
yeah.
or whatever? Yeah, it's a Yahoo case. It was a Yahoo
but
news
it's a
story.
very vague
Okay.
article. It didn't really say whether this kid had any other conditions or was born premature, whatever the case was. This seems to be the one and only case that I've read about where the patient didn't have any pre-existing conditions and seemed to have died strictly because of the flu.
Mm-hmm.
The vast majority of the other deaths have been of patients that have other maladies,
Yeah.
pneumonia, CHF, COPD, especially the respiratory diseases seem to be the ones that are prevalent, or a lot of cerebral palsy in the younger patients.
Yeah.
So then let me ask this. I'm gonna
What about
attack
diabetics?
you. Yeah. What about
Actually-
diabetics with balding hair patches on them? With the heart situation, does that happen?
What about fat, bald Mexicans?
Who like dogs?
who probably don't go to the doctor or get diagnosed with
damn
anything,
it.
right? Yeah.
So
Don't let anybody cough on you, please.
listen. Sorry, I had to clear my throat. So
to
can
spread your
can the flu kill?
allergy.
Can the flu kill you?
Oh, yeah.
alone.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go and say no, but I am not an expert.
Okay. So can getting the flu shot help you?
It won't harm you.
Okay.
Although to be fair, and I'll say this much, I do have the flu shot, so mine seems to have worked. I work
With
4
sick
days.
people?
Yeah, I'm in, for all intents and purposes, in a petri dish full of flu for
Sounds
40
like fun.
for 48 straight hours.
That's a sexy
a
job.
week. Yes, it's fantastic. I love.
Just remind everybody you work at
love-
the hospital,
Yes, I do.
and you do that 4 or 5 times,
4
days out of the week.
4 nights. Yeah,
How many hours?
12 hours each.
So you're in that environment.
Oh yeah, and there's sickly people all over the place, and I've managed to not get sick.
Yeah.
Luckily, whether it's because of the flu vaccine or whether because I have a good immune system,
Or you've just been lucky.
or that alone, I'm not sure.
On the other side, I don't work out. I don't exercise. I don't eat healthy. I rarely ever get sick. I've probably gotten sick probably 3 times in the last 10 years. I've never had the flu shot. I'm fucking fine. But how much of that is genetics and how much of it is luck and how much of it is that I think I have a strong immune system.
But are you
That's
of the
what it sounds
belief?
like.
Because I don't wash my hands after I go to the restroom. I don't shower, and
Barry,
I'm around animals
you just
all
shook
the
your
time.
hand right now after coming out of the bathroom. You
Yeah, so
might
now
wanna-
I've boosted his immune system.
by sharing your disgustingness. Sweet.
But I mean, are you of the belief?
He's like, oh man, I'm gonna cut off my head.
Are you of the belief, though, Charlie, that I'm not going to get the flu shot because I'm going to get the flu and it'll be worse? Or
No.
If I don't get the flu shot, I'm going to get the flu. Or
No.
I'm not into vaccinations. I'm not into. I mean, let's up it up. Let's take it up a notch with vaccinations altogether.
I turn 40 next month. I think my luck is running out. I think I'm going to start
You're gonna
taking...
stop pushing
You're on the
it.
Yeah.
clock now.
let me just tell you, dude. 43. Yeah.
I think I'm going to start taking the flu shot. Also, my wife is an educator, so she works in the school. She has a weak immune system. She's had health problems ongoing for a while.
Did she get the flu shot?
Yes, she did.
Good.
Yeah, and for that, because again, I'm turning 40 next month. I'm not gonna risk it anymore. Again, I don't work out. I don't eat healthy. I think I've just mostly it's my immune system that's strong, and
You've been lucky so far.
I've been lucky. I was homeless in New York, and I was around a lot of germs.
That's what
and
did
I
it.
never got sick.
Yeah,
It helped me.
And predisposition to germs and diseases will make your immune system
That's
pretty
why,
ironclad.
if anything, I'm against these places that have hand sanitizers everywhere,
Everywhere.
and that people are constantly using hand sanitizers.
Then you're
'cause-
too clean.
right.
You're not
Well,
building it up.
Exactly.
I've said that ever since the beginning of having these places with hand sanitizers and constantly washing and always cleaning.
My son was born a preemie, and there's
Congratulations!
always and,
Yay, March of Dimes!
yes, never had anything to do with it. But they do have this kind of like
That made the
It's a
labor
reversal.
and delivery easier, right? Because he was smaller.
no, I was cut open.
Oh,
She's smaller.
Damn it.
She's smaller in stature as well, though.
Yeah.
Again, I think that's physics at work. It's all perception. I don't know. I've never seen.
No, he was cut right out of me.
Okay.
He was scooped out.
He was pried out.
Salad tongs.
He was literally hanging on to stuff. He didn't want to come out.
didn't come
No, he was all screaming, and yeah, it was interesting.
Well, Erica, I wouldn't either. Hey, just saying.
Oh, God.
I'm sure it had nothing to do with that, though.
I'm just saying if it were. So now let me ask you this then. He was preemie and he was born cesarean, so whenever he leaves a place, does he go out the window?
Yes.
He has to, not the front door.
There's a direct shoot that's aimed right at this car seat in the car, and it just goes right in. No outside contact, just straight to the vehicle.
Here we thought this was going to be the tough podcast. Here we thought this was going to be.
Now we've just managed to shoot my son out a window. It's great.
The podcast before was the hard podcast,
I'm sure
wasn't it?
Yeah.
I'm sure his 9-year-old self would like to hear this.
Save this for posterity or
Yes.
prosperity or wherever.
Posterity.
Wherever you're going to save it at. Save it.
Whatever.
So, Barry, do you take the flu shot, or are you against it, or are you opposed, or what's your feeling on the flu shot?
I haven't gotten a flu shot in years.
No.
Have you been sick? Do you have any pre-existing?
How old
nothing?
are you?
No, I'm fine.
Roughly, how old are you?
I'm 38.
30. Oh, okay. We're close.
Yeah.
You look way younger than I do. What the fuck?
I'm sure he wasn't homeless in New York.
But did you see all of a sigh of relief?
He probably had nice things like love and family.
A middle name.
He said 38.
A white last name.
He
Yeah,
said 38, and we all went.
Yeah.
We're okay. I didn't frisk him when he walked in, so we're good. We're good. We're clowning with Barry a little bit because of the reason why we brought him in. Let's go ahead and move into that topic now.
Well, really quick before we do that, and on a more serious note, and talking about the flu, I have a coworker who unfortunately passed away due to the flu, is what they're saying. Yesterday.
That was yesterday, yeah.
Wow.
But as far as I know, she did have some pre-existing conditions. What they were specifically, I'm not privy to, but either way.
So can we then just say, if you don't jump at a conclusion about the flu or not getting the flu shot or being the flu, you have to do your own quick little research, common sense.
Also, do be aware of your symptoms. If you've got lingering fevers,
don't wait forever.
Please don't wait 5 weeks.
Or start rubbing Robitussin on
Yes.
it.
If the Robitussin isn't working after 2 days, let's go to the doctor.
Yeah.
Don't start rubbing Robitussin and drinking Vicks. Is that what you're
please.
Yeah.
Or
Yes.
Smoking it, whatever.
Or
you want.
whatever you do with whatever you want.
and making light of, but however.
But
the,
no,
the
in
fact
all
of the matter
seriousness,
is
though,
common sense.
We did lose someone that we worked with in the EMS family and on my side, and just it's one of those things,
Don't know if it could have been or not, prevented of it happening, whatever. But the bottom line is take some common sense. Don't wait to the last minute. Of course, if you have pre-existing conditions, I hate that term, but that's what it is. If you have other conditions with you, obviously you're going to take more.
Exacerbating factors.
Thank you. Those are big words. I was just going to say, if you're sick, you're going to get sicker.
Somebody
you've got
give me a little
allergy.
bouncing ball out. How many syllables was that?
So Barry,
Well, Erica, thank you for bringing the show down. I appreciate it with that last little tidbit of information.
I love contributing.
Our condolences to the family, and that's
Indeed.
horrible.
and
But
our thoughts and prayers.
That's one thing.
Thoughts and prayers.
Share, That's one of the things that I'm seeing more this flu season is way more people are being affected by it because, I mean, I don't know what's going on.
But at the same time, it's also probably got to do with the reporting and social
Right.
media, and
More
that's
stories are
it's-
catching on.
exactly. So a lot more people are hating share, and oh my god, share.
It's those Russian bots.
It is the Russian bots. It's Putin.
So we had a shooting recently, another shooting, and this one was carried out at a school in Florida. And this was a student that was 19 years old and expelled. So, again, every time there's a shooting like this, the debate starts again. And it's usually, should we ban these weapons, or should we make it harder to get these weapons? Or in some cases, should we just charge, $500 per bullet? Like, what is actually going to help? And I've been trying
Is anything going to help?
And that's the thing. Like, for me, that the reason I wanted to bring somebody in to talk about this is because, as far as I know, the three of us on the show are not against guns. But I think there's an issue going on that needs to be addressed, and it's just a matter of looking at it from different angles. It's not just if you ban the gun, a specific type of gun, that's not going to stop it. There's always going to be mental health issues. There's always going to be the impulse. The people that lack impulse control, there's always going to be something. There's always going to be gunshots and gun victims.
And let's be real, they're always going to be available.
Yeah, but
on shady corners. And
let me just also add in, I don't think there is one end-all, beat-all solution to what the problem is.
Agreed.
And it's not just school. I still want to throw out there, it's not just school shootings either. It's
Right,
a mass
yeah.
shooting. It's
It's a
some
mass
sort of
shooting.
mass shooting.
Right.
Don't let it get covered up in social media or in the news. And I'll be the first one working in media to admit, this is gold.
Yeah.
For
Oh, yeah.
media.
Right.
This is what they wait for. The flu, hey, that's kind of cool. That's
hey,
the
that
bronze.
was cool for a little bit.
But now this is, let's latch on to something, and I think too many people don't do enough of the research for what's presented to them in front of them.
Yes.
yeah, and me personally, I feel like I'm not against guns. I'm not against banning all weapons or anything, but I do have a problem with the AR-15 style weapons. I do have an issue with that because they are made, and we're going to have a discussion. We're going to be talking about how do you define assault weapon? How do you
Semi-automatic, Uzis.
There's different
any
types,
of those.
but a lot of people on the pro gun side will say this weapon does the same thing that a handgun that's a semi-automatic weapon will do. There's obviously a definition of it, and Congress has written one. People believe another one. A big misconception is that AR stands for assault rifle, and I know that's not true. It's armor light rifle. There's things that people are ignorant about. And again, I'm not against guns. I personally don't feel I need a gun, and I've owned guns. I've shot them. I'm pro law enforcement. I just don't see the need for me to have an AR-15 style weapon.
Military style weapon.
And the more I see these shootings, I'm starting to question. I don't see the need for people in general to have these types of weapons. So if you guys want to go into how you feel, and then we can start to kind of go over what.
Well, let's go back. Let's real quick reintroduce Barry with us, since Barry's in the mix, and that way we don't spend too much time having to introduce him once again and once again. So
Because
Barry,
poor guy, we've already introduced him like
five
5 million
times. I understand. Charlie put the call out to somebody for this debate. Not even debate. Discussion.
It's discussion,
It's
yeah.
going to be a discussion about these type of weapons. So Barry,
Let's set some ground rules before we start. Number one, I'm pretty sure we're not going to change each other's opinion.
no, maybe it could be swayed or shown a different viewpoint, but changed. No,
Yeah, I don't think we're going to solve anything in this discussion. And number two, let's try not to use analogies, and if we're going to use analogies, let's try to actually make it a real analogy rather than just reaching for whatever.
Right.
And obviously no personal insults.
Okay, fat ass.
Thanks, you cunt.
Oh, now that we've got that off our chests, let's move on.
All right, Barry, you putz. What do you got?
What was it? You pair of ass hats?
So tell us a little bit about your background and how you feel about the issue.
Yeah, okay. So I started shooting. There we go. Sorry. I started shooting about 15 years ago. Kind of late in life for a lot of folks. I do a lot of competitive shooting, pistol, rifle. I don't even own a shotgun. I don't like shotguns. I do own ARs. I got a stack of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about...
Is that how you store them, though? You just stack them on top of each other?
That's how I do my DVDs.
You just tangle them all together. It makes it tough to get out there. Yeah. It's like balls of yarn. Everything sticks together.
So if you really
I've
want
gone
to...
through 10 cats.
If you really want to go shoot a place, you got to do some work.
Yeah, of course.
You got to get at the gun.
Yeah, you got to put in the effort first.
And by the way, this is all lightheartedness. Come on, nobody be offended. We're trying to make light of a situation, please.
Yeah. So you do competition shooting. So explain what type of competition or sport do you use an AR-15 for, or AR-15 style type of weapon?
So I use mine. We do multi-gun competition. So we'll do pistol and rifle, and then some just plain rifle.
Any slingshots or
no,
no,
none of that.
Bats with
we don't throw
wire.
We don't throw rocks or anything like that. No.
And how popular is the sport? Do a lot of people choose the AR-15, or is it a preference thing? Or
yeah, so there's different organizations nationwide and around the world that do these rifle competitions, and the AR is the standard. I mean, that's what everybody uses because generally speaking, it's the easiest to use. It's most easily controllable. It has capacity, whatever. It's customizable. So if you want to do a particular type of competition, if you want to do long range competition, you just get a different outfit with longer barrels, whatever. So
the AR-15 is a lot like the Jeep Wrangler of guns. I mean, you can customize it, you can paint them.
It's more
utility,
and it's versatile.
It's more like the '96 Honda Civic. You can put spoilers on it. You can put those fancy rims,
good analogy.
some spinners.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you want to do analogies.
You know what? That's
valid.
That's the acceptable one.
great.
There we go.
So what's your position on this? Obviously, every time there's a shooting, there's going to be different debates and rhetoric and political stuff. I want to try to stay away from the political side of it, but really, what's your honest opinion? Do you think these AR-15 style weapons should be accessible, or are they considered sport weapons? Or
yes,
okay,
they are considered sporting arms.
Now, what is the difference between that and another type of sporting arm, besides the customization and the firepower? They're easier to use, but what is it that makes people really want to hang on to the AR-15 style gun
as a sporting weapon?
Well, really, it is that customizability.
There you go.
Whatever
customization
is that ability to customize it for every particular job that you may want to do.
Okay.
It's perfectly valid for hunting. States that have laws that say, well, you can only hunt with straight-walled cartridges. Well, you can get an AR-15 upper in a straight-walled caliber, go out and hunt deer with it. Fine. Here in Texas, they're hunting hogs with them every day, all day. For, like you said, competition for home defense. I've got them set up for home defense. Ballistically speaking, it's superior to shotguns than to pistols. That's what I've got setups for that, and I think that's really what people latch on to. And then of course, you start having we have really large veteran populations. These are guys that's what they know. That's the gun, a version of the
M4
gun that they know exactly.
Right.
And so you look back historically. And when you have these large populations of people going to fight wars and things like that, or not even just that, but, where they travel in groups, and they do certain things and they have certain things, when they come back from that, they want to keep that. So, like, it was a big thing after World War II. These guys came back from the Army and they wanted to bring their Jeeps and their motorcycles
And Honda Civics.
And their Honda Civics.
1996
exactly.
Honda Civics.
Yeah.
That was great.
So it's a lot of that. It's familiarity. It's, the customization. It's it's the right tool for a lot of jobs.
So when people say, well, what's the purpose of having this weapon? You're providing that. Well, not you're providing, but you're stating this is the purpose. This is the reason why people have
plenty.
it.
Yeah, there are plenty of purposes.
Now, what are the things that you would personally tell people that say, let's say only military and law enforcement should have this type of weapon? What would you tell those two types of people? Because it is based on a military style weapon.
Sure.
So to say the military's purpose in using weapons is to kill people, right? I mean, you don't shoot security boxes or cameras off with them, but you're using bullets to kill people.
So cool.
Well,
that'd be kind of neat.
That's Rambo too.
I know. That's Call of Duty.
But in theory, the gun that is used, the M4, is used to kill people.
Sure.
And the AR-15 was built on that type of gun. So what do you say to people that say, well, they're not assault, some people will say they're assault rifles. That definition is kind of blurred. There's really no real definition. I've heard that the term assault weapon was basically made up as a political way to, just
demonize the weapon.
Yeah. So, but what would you say?
No one would go along with a ban on defensive weapons. But you call it an assault weapon,
right?
And you can get people saying, well, I don't want you assaulting me. Mm-hmm. And I'll say, well, I want to defend my home with it. No, it's an assault weapon. You don't defend things with it. Well, I can.
I mean, in all fairness, the soldiers do use it to defend themselves from...
Absolutely.
But then again, this is warfare. And that's its intended use. Its intended use is to go out there and kill the enemy if they so need to.
Is it though? I mean, going by what
but
Barry
here's
said.
the thing.
He's using it for sport.
I'm
That's
talking
not
about the
intention.
M4 because this is what this weapon was pretty much based on.
The
So
way
the
I see it
M4
is-
was made to
that's-
help infantrymen defend themselves in battle.
Was
in
it
war.
any gun? I mean, then by that
Yeah.
definition, isn't any gun?
Yeah, but that's
Exactly.
the case. If that were the case, they'd be out there with a handgun, but they're not.
And just to be clear,
Sure
the
they are.
the M4,
Of course they are.
Not specifically. They've got it as a sidearm.
Sure, but they still have it.
Yes, in case they lose.
but they also have handguns.
Yeah.
Not all military are issued rifles. A lot of them
No, they're
have
not.
a
And
later
I've worked on
sidearm.
military.
Yeah.
I've worked on military installations, so I know how that goes.
Yeah, and so that's the thing is, not everybody, you want a military style weapon. Well, every weapon is military style. If you want to get down to it, that's where they all come from.
Not a 22 long rifle Taurus.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
Let's not get into High Point right now.
with a spoiler on the back.
So 22s are actually used by a number of militaries because they suppress very well. They're good subsonic. At distance, they can be less than lethal.
But how many military units actually use those right now, currently, for war, for actual combat?
As a standard issue,
Some.
which means what?
But in,
Some.
in defense of, but in defense of Barry, by his definition, by not so much his definition, but by definition, all weapons, all guns would be considered military. That's their purpose, to either defend or to cause harm, in a very, very broad sense.
I'm pretty sure the weapons that were used by Spaniards weren't specifically, or even like the Western frontiermen.
A musket
Yeah.
is going to be single shot and takes a while to reload. You have to.
Can you imagine using that right now?
And I know that the argument has been, getting into the Second Amendment, that's been one of the arguments is, well, back then when they wrote the Bill of Rights, they fired muskets. And I know that's not completely accurate, and I'm pretty sure the forefathers understood that there's going to be technology and advances, and I'm pretty sure they understood that there's going to be other weapons besides a single shot musket with the big ball bearing and all that stuff. But at the same time, The Constitution has evolved. It's changed. There's things that the Constitution allowed back then that have been amended because society evolves. We change.
And it was made as an amendable document.
And yeah, exactly. And from the pro-gun community, what I see a lot of times is it was written that way. It should stay that way. And I have a problem with that because at the same time, the Constitution allowed for slavery and it didn't allow women to vote. Does that mean those amendments also should be?
That's how it's written.
Right.
See, I liken the Constitution a lot to the Bible in that when you read it, it's really up to interpretation also.
Yeah.
Just because it's word printed down does not mean it is, no pun intended, gospel. But you have to take into it interpretation of it. So not only is it amendable and changeable, it's also in the perception of it and the interpretation of what it's saying.
Mm-hmm. Barry?
Very, very
Well,
good point.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's a living document, you know, and I think that the founding fathers were very, you know, I'm not going to presume to know exactly what they were doing.
We can only hope.
But I think that they very purposely did things like didn't say that the First Amendment protects newspapers. They said freedom of the press. They said, you know, Second Amendment doesn't say the right to keep and bear muskets. It says arms. Because they knew that things change. Evolution, you know, technology evolves, things change. You want to ensure that certain rights are more broadly, you know, interpretable in order to have the First Amendment protect Twitter, for example. You know, and that's sort of, you know, those crazy analogies that a lot of people have is, you know, well, should you have a license, need a license to get a gun? Well, maybe, but should you need a license to get on, you know, the internet? Should you need a license to be on the radio? Besides,
they
FCC
just
license, whatever. But
they just
they're not even there.
Yeah.
They
Doesn't
just
matter.
repealed the FCC ruling on
Right.
the internet, so it's now no longer utility. So technically, you're giving that power to the service providers, the
Right.
internet provider. So now is what's happening if we don't regulate the AR-15 style weapons or other weapons? Is the power giving? Is the government giving that power of the control to the manufacturers or to the actual people?
I'm not sure I'm getting that.
So, like you're saying, the First Amendment and the freedom of the press should apply to Twitter or internet in general.
Well, I think it should apply to anything.
To free speech.
Yeah.
But the government has already repealed that, so now it's in control of the service providers. So if we're I'm talking about net neutrality.
Yeah.
So
right.
basically, if that access is in control of the service providers, is gun control in the hands of the manufacturers, like the NRA, which represents the beliefs of the manufacturers, not necessarily the gun holders.
So who should have control of access?
Right.
Well, the government controls that. We've got thousands and thousands of laws that already.
But the Second Amendment is a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. Mm-hmm. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So it's basically to protect ourselves from the federal government if something, if they start to infringe on the state rights, right? Isn't that a well-regulated state militia?
Doesn't say state militia.
Well, of the state. Of the governing state.
Oh, all right, yeah. So the Supreme Court has held what were the terms? Prefatory clause. Basically, the Second Amendment is two things. It's saying that a well-regulated militia is necessary, and that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. One is not mutually exclusive of the other, or inclusive. You don't have to be a militia to keep and bear arms, which is why and this is, you know, semantics and punctuation and everything, but that's how the courts have interpreted it. You do not have to be well-regulated militia in order to exercise the right to keep and bear arms.
Mm-hmm. Now, how many? If it's supposed to be the way the amendment was written by the founding fathers, it does say a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Like, who are these members of? Well, for one, can
Where
you
is this
define
well-regulated militia?
what is a well-regulated militia?
So I believe officially now the militia is considered to be like state national guard,
Right. And that's what
state guard, but different states have different rules and different regulations on what can be a militia, which is why you can have you could go and start your own militia tomorrow if you wanted to.
But there's no regulation on it.
So this
Sure,
militia,
yeah, there are laws against it. There I shouldn't say against it. There are laws that govern what a militia can and can't do. I mean, you can't start your own militia and then use it to go overthrow the government. That's just that's against the law. What gets regulated there is the members more so than the militia itself, in that the regulation on who, if you want to be an armed militia, well, do you meet the qualifications in order to be legally armed? And if the answer is no, well, how can you be the militia if you can't legally be armed?
Okay. What are some of the issues that you have when people say that the Constitution doesn't mean the AR-15 style weapons or whatever weapons? Obviously, some
It
weapons
doesn't mean muskets. Does it say muskets?
No.
Yeah, well,
And I
there
agree
go.
with you on
Does
that.
it say swords?
I agree with you on
Does it
that.
say sharpened spoons?
Well,
I mean, that's the thing. It's his arms, and like I
okay.
said,
What
I
if
think
they meant
that's-
literally arms? Like you have the right to not have your limbs taken
If you
away.
don't want your hand, you don't have to have it.
You
Or
have
you
the right
can
to
now
be
take somebody
sleeveless
else's
all day.
arms.
You have the right
add them
to
to your
wear
collection.
tank tops.
Yeah.
But I mean, we can get into, like, obviously the Supreme Court has looked at this
But again,
in
I
the
think
past.
what it boils down to again is still its definition and perception of definition, and who we
Well-
are allowing the definition. If it's coming from the Supreme Court,
Well, and the courts rule on Second Amendment issues all the time.
But at the
And-
same time, Anthony Scalia said himself that this shouldn't apply to the assault rifle style weapons. And Reagan was opposed to that as well. And he was a huge defender of firearms. I mean, he was huge. So the question is,
except not so much.
well, given
What happened
given
in
example,
1986 when he was in charge?
the Panama deal?
That's when it got illegal to manufacture machine guns, for one.
Is that from 80s?
1986.
I thought that was which was the one that was in 93 and then passed in 94?
That was the assault weapons ban.
Okay. And did he oppose that, or was he in favor of that?
The assault weapons ban?
Yeah, that was Carter that was in favor, Reagan was in favor, and then Clinton is the one that actually passed it.
Could be. I don't remember exactly who was.
So we're going to go in circles as far as what this particular weapon means. But what do you feel about other weapons that are illegal? Like, let's say a sawed-off shotgun. That's not covered in federal law, but
Oh, yes, it is.
is it?
Oh, yeah.
So why isn't that considered just another arm?
what makes it
Bureaucracy.
illegal?
Bureaucracy. It's not illegal.
I mean, you
It's
personally
perfectly
said
legal.
you don't like shotguns. What makes?
Oh no, I don't have any use for one. I don't hunt.
I don't
hunt
like
doves or
shotguns.
anything.
But you can.
I think
But you
they're-
can use the AR-15 to hunt if you so desired.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't like shotguns because they're messy. The accuracy isn't that great. They're loud. They'll probably kick you back. For home protection, I wouldn't. I don't know about the
No.
newer ones, but I would never
No.
use that. And I can see using an AR-15 style weapon for home defense. I can see that. It's just that every time there's another shooting like this, I think 6 out of the last 10 have included a weapon like this.
Sure.
So I'm thinking this was based on military type of weapon. Obviously, you said that there's a lot of veterans that prefer that because it's got some type of sentimental value. It kind of goes along with what they were using when they were enlisted. But at the same time, I feel like most of the public doesn't need a weapon like this. So maybe the solution is not necessarily banning them, but why not make them a little bit harder to obtain? Why not require what do you need right now to buy an AR-15 in Texas?
In Texas,
Yeah.
you need a state ID. You have to be over 18. You have to have a clean background check, which means no felonies, no You can't be adjudicated mentally defective. No commissions to.
What
mental
about any
institutions.
drug charges or violent charges?
If you've been convicted of domestic violence, you are precluded from owning firearms. If you're a user of illegal drugs, and that's actually something that's kind of interesting, because in places like Colorado, where it's legal to smoke pot, you are not allowed to buy a gun if you're smoking pot in Colorado. Like, that is straight up federally illegal. And so that's become this sort of weird kind of gray area, because, well, the state law says one thing, but the federal law says another thing.
Right.
When you go to fill out that federal background check, it asks if you're a user of illegal drugs, and they've had to add wording into it in the definitions to say, even if you live in the state where it's legal, federal law says it is illegal, and you must, answer yes, I'm a user of illegal drugs, and you will be denied that purchase.
Do you think it should be harder to obtain these weapons, or do you think it's fine the way it is, or do you think it's overregulated as it is?
I think it's fine how it is. I mean, when the system is used the way it's designed, it works. A lot of people get denied the purchases. The problems arise when there's that lack of information sharing, and we were discussing this earlier.
Like the church shooter.
He had been convicted in a court martial, which those records weren't transferred properly. They should have been.
Right. Yes, this was a failure on the Army's part.
And they didn't transfer
military.
Air Force.
Whoever the hell that was.
I think it was Air Force. Yeah.
Let's not throw the Army under the bus.
Yes, that's why I amended myself and I said military. Oh yes, especially here. Sorry to all my friends who are military.
So that's when you have these failures, and you hate to say that you slip through the cracks, but
that's what happened.
The fact of the matter is, someone was at fault for that, for not making sure that information was shared properly. Dylan Roof in North Carolina or South Carolina, same thing. He had issues in the past, but they weren't included in the background check because the state didn't share the information properly with the FBI for the background check.
Well, then let's flip it on you. Let's talk about the Aurora, Colorado shooter in the movie theater. Let's talk about the Las Vegas shooter. And by almost purposely, almost subconsciously, I won't remember their names. I've completely blocked that out just because. Let's talk about the latest school shooting. So how are these individuals, who really, for the most part, I think out of those three that I mentioned, don't have a military background, how are they getting these weapons? Why are they getting these weapons? How do we make it harder for an 18, 19-year-old kid to get these weapons, knowingly that if you want a gun, you're going to get a gun, whatever gun you want. There's ways to get it.
Of course.
Do you make it harder for them? How are they getting them? Charlie said something almost as a joke earlier, but it's something that I've seen on Facebook a few times. Do you jack up the prices of the ammunition because now I'm shooting $500 rounds every time? I mean, what can we do to solve? I know there's no solve, but what can we do to solve that? These individuals.
Do you think any 18-year-old should have, as long as they fit that definition, do you think they should be able to buy a weapon like that just by walking in and out?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't think 18 is too young?
To do what? Join the Army and get issued one?
Well, you can do that at 17.
Yeah. No. There's drinking age at 21.
But they're showing you how to kill. I mean, that's the military, right? They're showing you to train you to use these weapons to kill people. So I would put that in a different box. I'm just saying the people that don't want to join the military. Do you think just any 18-year-old should be able to just walk in, get a gun, and that's it? I mean,
no, I don't think just any 18-year-old should be able to do it. I think any 18-year-old who is able to meet the legal requirements should be able to.
Because by 18, there's usually no criminal record because you're 18. So even if they had a juvenile record, that's sealed because there were juveniles at the time. So you don't think there's a loophole there, or maybe a hold? Let's say you're under 25, there should be a 30-day hold or something like that. Do you think it's fine the way it is?
So the federal background check right now can take up to 5 days to do. And in the meantime, you don't get the gun. Like if you go inside, you go fill out the form, do the background check, and they do what's called a delay. And so the dealer either calls up FBI or does it all online. It's all online now. And you just get this notice that says delay. And what that means is, we're not sure you should sell this to him or her.
Yeah.
Give us a couple of days to look into it. And if it takes them 3 days, takes that 72 hours, and on the 5th day they've decided, well, we can't find anything, they won't approve the sale. What happens is it just clears. It gets approved because it times out, basically.
Okay. Now, is it at the discretion of the gun dealer to make that decision, or do they
After
5 days? Yes. So I know there are some dealers who will not do sales transfers without an approval. So if after that time lapses, the FBI hasn't come back and said approved, then they just won't do the sale.
So let me ask you on this. Obviously, that's a dealer, right? The FFL?
Right.
Now, what about private gun sales between individuals?
Okay.
I mean, there's no background check. There's no bill of sale. There's nothing. One person can buy the same type of weapon by skipping the dealer altogether and skipping the dealer's discretion and the FBI check. So is that working fine the way it is?
So right now, anybody who wants to do a private transfer, a private legal transfer, so like in Texas, you don't have to do sales through a licensed dealer. You can do person-to-person sales. As the system is built now, anytime that I want to do that, I can take that, like say you want to buy a gun from me. And I say, great, bring your money. We're going to go over to this shop over here, and they're going to run a background check. You're not buying it through that dealer, but the background check now has a little checkbox for private sale. And what that tells the FBI is this is not going through the licensed dealer. It's being done by private individuals.
But how many people actually do that?
Quite a few, actually. I didn't think people would. And I don't know that, I couldn't tell you if it's a majority, if it's 50% or whatever. But I do know that it is being used.
Because in all reality, most of the people that we've discussed have probably acquired their weapons in just that very same manner without going, because I didn't know you had, or you could do that. Go to the dealer and have them run the background for you. But I'm pretty sure, and these are, again, all assumptions, but I'm pretty sure that this is how most of these guys acquired their weapons.
For the most part, that's not true. This kid in Florida bought his through a licensed dealer.
The vast majority have.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that at least that one crazy old man,
in Vegas.
and I can't remember his name, but I'm pretty sure that's probably how he got his, because there's no way he would have gotten them otherwise.
Yeah, and again,
that is a small percentage.
Yeah,
that is.
And I mean, if you want to talk about small percentages, ARs get used in a 0.01% of all crimes. I mean, you want to ban this gun that gets used less than people getting murdered with baseball bats. So where do you draw that line?
Well, ban the Jose Canseco bat.
You don't have to fill out paperwork to buy a baseball bat. So the numbers are going to be exponential. Right, but I'm saying to acquire a baseball bat, you don't have to go through a FBI check or anything.
No.
So you can just
But they kill more people than ARs. So
right, because there's more of them easily accessible. I don't see that again, if we're going to use an analogy, to me, if more people die from baseball bats, that's because you don't need anything to buy a baseball bat. For a gun, you do need to go through a process, usually, if you're going through a dealer. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, those two arguments are there's more people that get killed by vending machines, right? But again...
Like diabetes at the Pepsi machine that's just over years?
Depending on the type of diabetes.
Yeah, we've learned that. Let me flip this then. Let me flip this because, again, we knew this going in, but there's not an answer for that. There's not a solution. That's just, you're going to get the gun, you're going to get the gun. Doesn't matter where. Even if it's, I have a stack of guns, and here, Charlie, have one. I have no idea. I'm not taking Charlie to the store to go get background check.
Let me just clarify that a little bit. So I can conduct a private sale in Texas. Like I said, if I want to sell you a gun, the regulations say that I cannot sell it to you if I have reason to believe that for whatever reason you are not legally allowed to buy a gun. So if you come to me and I look at you and I go, wow, you look like you're 13. I don't think I should sell you this. I can't.
You wouldn't ask for ID though?
So that's the thing. What, you never had a fake ID, man? Come on.
No, I didn't. Actually, no.
But so
he was selling them. He just never had one.
If you say you want to buy a gun from me, and you show up with your money, and man, you've been smoking weed? I can smell that on you. I cannot sell you that gun. I'm committing a felony.
What if
I
you
sell
smell
you that
alcohol?
gun? Alcohol is not included. So,
Okay. But
because
do you-
alcohol is legal.
But if
So
right, but
A guy
So if-
I'm just trying
so
to
let's
wrap my.
say-
hold on,
a guy could be drunk,
You can
buying
legally
a gun.
No.
You can legally sell a gun to a drunk guy.
Yeah.
no,
No?
because it's illegal to possess a firearm if you're intoxicated.
But you said that alcohol is legal.
If I smell a beer,
he would
if
be in
you-
trouble, but you wouldn't.
No. So you
'Cause
show up, and
you're
I
giving
smell
him
it,
possession
and
of the weapon.
No,
So-
I would be committing a felony by transferring it to you, and then you would be
If
committing
I was
a felony
drunk-
by possessing it.
If I was drunk and you sold it to me, you would end up with charges?
Yes,
Why?
I would be committing a felony
Why is that?
because you are not allowed to possess a firearm when you're drunk. So if I give it to you,
But that charge would go to the person in charge of
but
possession
the
of
person, the transferor, which would be me, cannot do that transfer if I believe there's any reason why you shouldn't be allowed to have it.
Okay.
So like I said, if I
It's the
think you're
definition of. I mean, it's just all definition.
I would have to look it up.
yeah, and so if I think if I think you meet any of those check boxes on that background check, if I think you look, if I heard someone tell me that maybe you beat your wife one time. Well, I can't sell you a gun because you might have that record. If
Let's
I
be
think
honest,
that
though. You're a very legit guy, from what I can hear.
But see, that's the thing. That's the thing is these laws are all in place.
They are, but how many people
but-
do they actually care?
So
I'm pretty sure that
you
Cholo down
can't-
the street's
but-
not going to care if I want a gun.
Hector?
Yeah, Hector is
Hector's
going to
cool.
flip them switches and he's just going to give me that gun.
Hector's
But,
all right.
but see, that's where the problem arises is that you can't pass laws to make people nice. You can't pass a law that says I have to be a good guy. Okay, what you can do is you can say, here's the laws that apply to Barry anytime he wants to do this. And if Barry chooses not to, well, that's on Barry. That's not on everybody else who's doing things the right way. So when somebody goes and shoots up a school, one guy out of 80 million legal gun owners, how do you justify trying to change so many laws to address that tiny portion
because
of the
Facebook
population?
because Facebook says, social media says, one time is too much.
Right.
That's how, or that's why.
But
Yeah.
it's not one time.
No.
It's not been one time.
There's plenty of statistics
have we
to show
counted
it's
the
not
bodies?
one time.
Yeah.
I mean,
Now,
just this last time alone was 17 bodies,
yeah.
17 people dead.
How
It's
many-
not
how
one
many-
time.
I haven't looked at the news, but how many people got murdered in Chicago?
No, let's start with Iraq.
How many people get killed in Chicago every
But those are
weekend?
criminals. Those are obviously people
Is that kid not a criminal?
right.
That kid
well,
who shot up the school, not a criminal.
But those people that you're talking about in Chicago, those are gang violence and things like that.
Or they're people hanging out at barbecues and they get caught in drive-bys. I mean, you're trying
Are we talking about the offenders or the victims?
the victims.
I thought you were asking about the offenders. Like, who are those
No,
people
the victims.
doing the
No,
actual shooting?
victims. No.
Well, the same thing can be said about Florida. The people that died were students. They weren't.
Right.
They weren't. Some of them weren't 18. They weren't in that environment because they wanted to get shot. They did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
But I'm saying
but
is
that's what I'm saying is where's the outrage at the local level?
Why
Where's
is
the-
it that they always bring up Chicago?
Because it's the most violent city in the country.
Why is that?
Because they have a lot of gang problems and drug problems.
Okay.
well,
Which means
Yeah.
that, again, they're accessing guns illegally.
illegal.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. So, in that way, why can't we do something to stop that?
What are you going to do?
Let's open a discussion.
Make drugs illegaler?
Well, let me ask
I mean,
you, going back to
that's the thing
Chicago,
is-
if you're going to use Chicago, those aren't resulting in two-digit
Mass.
victims. I mean, you're looking at one or two deaths here and there. And I've listened to the police radio, the scanners in Chicago, and I see your point. I say the same thing. I've had this discussion with my wife. I've argued the same exact thing you're saying. But those murders are 1, 2, 3. You're not looking at a dead count of 17 or 56 or
But if it's 1, 2, 3, 2 people at a scene, but 8 scenes over a weekend,
right. And I
so there you go. I mean, you want to have your 17 bodies. that math adds up.
Right, but you're talking over the course of several hours compared to several
Or
minutes.
So it's okay as long as it's spread out.
That's not, you're bending my words. That's
Well-
that's not what I said. I'm just saying these specific weapons can carry out more deaths in a short amount of time.
So if we're willing
Then
to
what
agree,
Does
you're
the
seeing-
amount
so-
of, but does the amount of deaths? Let me put it to.
Yeah.
Does the amount of deaths matter when and where and how?
I think
how
it
many
does.
times?
So
If
think
we're
about-
going to
okay.
go by statistics, I think it does matter.
So the biggest school shooting in the U.S. some years ago, unfortunately it's changed, was Virginia Tech, right?
Right.
So what was that, 42 people?
I believe that's correct.
All pistols. No rifles there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Was he able to legally obtain those pistols?
yes.
Yes.
Because, again...
So doesn't
the
that tell you
background
there's
check
an
failed.
issue with that? If he was able
But so
to
okay,
acquire that,
so then you
legally,
want to ban the pistols too.
we're
I didn't
we're
say
not
ban.
talking
But
ban.
that's the
you're
thing.
putting words in my mouth. I
but-
never said ban.
But that's the thing.
I'm
is,
just saying, is
how
it
are you
too
gonna-
easy?
It's not too easy.
So how much education does somebody have to have before they buy an AR-15 style weapon?
Can I
It
go
depends
buy,
on where you live.
Can
Do
I
you
go
have
buy
to take?
an AR right
well, let's
now?
talk about Texas. We're in Texas right now. So how much? Let's say, do you have to take a class?
no.
And you don't see a problem with that.
No.
So a person could buy a weapon like this or a handgun at 21 years of age, or a rifle at 18, not know any
Or shotgun
parts
at 18.
or shotgun, not know any parts of the weapon or have never shown any proof that they've shot a weapon and still buy one, and you don't have an issue with that.
No.
So you don't think people should have some type of education before they buy a weapon?
Do you have to take driver's ed before you buy a car?
No, but you have to take driving lessons and you have to be observed by a state trooper before you get your license.
No, but to buy though, again,
But to buy.
To buy a car?
Yeah.
No.
If you want to carry a gun, you got to take
Are
a
we going
license.
to
You
use
got to take a
cars
class.
as the analogy?
So,
If
no,
you leave a
no,
car
no.
behind, you can trace it back to the owner.
no. But what if I
Well,
want to buy?
maybe.
What if I
how
want to
about
buy?
we do that with AR-15s?
What if I want to buy Charlie a car? I want to go buy you a car, and without getting into the whole thing of financing through, I want to go to the dealership, buy you a $13,000 car. So I'm going to go buy you a car. There, here you go. Here's your car. I didn't take any classes. Don't need to know how to drive the car. I bought you a Mercedes Benz, $85,000 car.
But
here,
the car by design is not intended to kill.
It's not. That's not what it's made for.
It's not built for that.
The fact that there's morons that can't drive is a different story.
Then
Right.
how about the fact that there's morons buying guns?
This
Either
is what
way.
this is what we're trying to address.
How do you solve that? I mean,
There's,
I don't
there's
think there's
not
any
one
way.
solution.
There
We've already
isn't,
said that.
But the thing
There's-
is that there's no opening to try to make one.
if you're going to
Or,
say,
and if it's not, and again, I have to go back. I'm kind of, I don't want to say siding with, but I'm kind of seeing Barry's point in a lot of this. How about a sharp knife, a sword, any of that stuff, or give me a Swiss Army knife. There's your assault weaponry right there. You can have as many knives as you want in one hand.
that doesn't
or
kill
a sharp
17 people in a few minutes.
Okay, shooting ninja stars. I
Dang,
can go to a knife
Good
shop.
luck. That's not going to kill
Yeah.
that many people either.
There was a
And
gentleman in...
by definition of killing, if I shot him on Thursday and he didn't die till Friday, now in your time frame, when did that individual die? At the scene? Is that part of it? Or this is a whole new group now?
The crime occurred at that specific time. If that person dies as
a
a result of
the
that,
crime.
it counts as that.
It's still a time
The,
issue.
the,
I
the,
still-
the,
I
the
still
legal
don't see
record
the
would say
time.
that he was murdered on the day that he died, though.
Right.
Not the day that he was shot.
But as a result of injury sustained within that incident.
Which
But
is-
the crime
is
itself,
different.
the
Of course.
charge itself would go towards the day of the event.
I don't believe so.
Yes,
it
it would.
It would happen on the day that he died.
no, because if you shot or you threw a ninja star at me, I was in ICU for 3 days, and then I died 3 days later, and you were already in jail for shooting that ninja star at me. Guess what you're being charged with now?
Well, I would have been charged with assault, I'm sure.
Yes, at that point.
Yes.
What happens? What are you charged with when I die?
Murder. But those are two different...
But
events.
you're not going to be
Is what
charged
you're
with the
saying.
murder on the day that the person died.
No,
That's,
but it's-
that's exactly what I'm saying.
But it's still murder for that
Eventually.
incident.
Not in every case. Maybe if there's a different cause of death that was originally due to the event, they can charge you when the person dies. But if the person died as a result of that event, they charge you for murder for that event, not the day that person died.
Okay.
In the grand picture of everything else, I think we're doing exactly what we said we didn't want to do. We're making it a little bit political. I think we're going that route only because here's the situation: people are still dead, children are dead. Las Vegas, concert goers are still dead. They're still dying.
Yes.
So how do we prevent that? How do we stop that? Then never mind the weapon. We could, if this guy had a strong enough, being facetious, but if there was strong enough, hard enough throw, he could have killed people with a rock from that vantage point. So maybe
Agreed.
it's not the tool, maybe it's not the weapon. How do we, and it's not even preventive, but how do we take care of it?
If you're going to consider the car, the vehicle, as a tool to commit murder, the person driving the tool is required to have a license. There's some type of connection that you have to drive that car, right?
Do we then make
I
it...
guarantee you there are people out there driving without a license right now.
I understand that, but legally, we're talking about legally.
And that's what I'm saying. Legally, if you want to do all these things with these AR-15s, that's great. But when you decide to go and murder people, you're outside that legally discussion. That legal discussion is gone out the window.
So do you agree that maybe we should be able to do something, or something should be done to try to prevent things like this?
Of course.
But as long as we keep our hands off the guns.
And we don't regulate.
Now,
as long as the problem is fixed, but that's not going to fix the problem.
There's going to be a lot of things.
Fix the problem?
I don't know. I don't have the answers.
To fix the problem, you don't just put a Band-Aid on one thing. You're going to have to address it all different ways. Now, if it's a mental health issue, which I agree, a lot of it is mental health. Some of it is parenting, which I want to get into right now. Mm-hmm. But there's different factors. It's not just accessibility of the gun, but if you can stop a lot of these that get through the cracks by making the accessibility of the weapon a little bit more difficult, or requiring some type of education or one-on-one assessment if that person actually should have that weapon, then you're going to save lives. But to say completely hands off the weapon, that's not a compromise. You're basically saying change everything else except my gun.
So there are a lot of states that do require things like getting a license to buy a gun. You need a separate license to buy ammunition. You have to do a background check to buy ammunition. You can't do any of that stuff without taking classes and being licensed.
Yeah.
And the crime is still there. It still happens. And that's the thing is the people who have this intent to go and do these things, they don't care about that stuff. They don't care that they need to do all those things, because a lot of times I don't care because I'm doing this murder-suicide. I'm going to be dead next Thursday anyway, so what's the difference?
Are you telling us your schedule?
Hold on,
should
my
we
days are
say
all booked
something?
up,
Say
man.
something?
let me dial 9-1 and wait. Let me ask this, and the one thing that Barry keeps saying, and if anybody else has caught on, is from state to state. Different rules apply state to state. So then how about a federal rule? A federal law across the board that says this is what needs to happen.
We have those already.
Tear it down completely. It's not working. Tear it down completely, start over and say the federal law requires you to get this, this, and this. So it's not different from the state of Texas. It's not different from, let's be honest, here in El Paso. We can go to New Mexico, do something completely different. You said Colorado. That's just a straight up drive 8 hours up. Mm-hmm. Shouldn't there be one law, one set of laws across the board that says this is how it is? Never mind the states, on a federal level, this is what's going to happen now. Would that help? Would that solve?
Well, I mean that's impossible. It's just that's how it is. I mean, we have certain federal regulations,
but it's possible for drugs.
Can I finish? So what happens is you have these federal laws, but the 10th Amendment says that if the federal government doesn't specifically say something, it's left up to the states. And so that's why the states are allowed to create these thousands of different laws. And I agree. I think it would be great if we had just a single set of rules that everybody had to follow. But the question is, which rules? Whose rules do we go by?
It sounds like it's in reverse right now. It sounds like it's up to the state, and then the government can step in.
It is. And well, so basically the federal government has really just set a baseline. Like I said, you have to be 18 to buy a rifle, for example. Some states will say, sure, but you can't buy any of these rifles on this list. You got to be 21 to buy a pistol. California says, but only pistols that are on this approved list that we have. That's it. And they're allowed to do that. that stuff has gone through the courts. It's been litigated for decades, and the courts consistently say, yeah, the states have the right to do that within reason. Heller in D.C. said that basically the in this case D.C., but we could correlate it to the states to say the state cannot tell you can't have a gun at home. Okay, great, but can I have it with me in my car? Well, in Texas, they'd say yes because your car is part of your home.
Castle.
And
Where I live.
and other states, yeah, exactly. But other states will say no, or other states will say yes, but you have to have it unloaded. You have to have the gun in one box. You have to have the ammunition in another box. You have to have the gun in the trunk and the ammunition in the glove box. So they get to have those sort of different interpretations of the law. The law says one thing, but it doesn't say a lot of things, and so it sort of gets open for that interpretation.
So is that part of do you think that's part of the problem? There's too much interpretation into.
I think a lot of the problem is that there are a lot of laws that are inconsistent across the board, especially state to state, and inconsistent enforcement of a lot of those. And so the problem with that is, I hate to say that they're slipping through the cracks, like we said, but the fact that Officer A conducting a traffic stop doesn't know that he needs to confiscate this firearm, or he doesn't know that this person has a record in, Nevada and shouldn't have that gun in Texas because their systems aren't set up to check that. And that, I think for me, I think that's the biggest problem is a lot of that information is there. A lot of that information that tells people and tells us what should be done and what can be done, but it just doesn't get shared. And I understand that there are things, there are privacy laws, and there are, when you get into the mental health issue, medical records are very private, and they always have been. And so how do we find an acceptable way for your doctor to share those records without violating your rights, but to provide that protection against you possibly buying again,
What if in the process of obtaining a weapon, you had to fill out a waiver to release your medical records if it's related to mental health?
Yeah, that would just never happen. I mean, and that's just...
But why wouldn't it happen? Because you don't want it to happen, or it wouldn't happen? Because I know a couple of doctors that would do that, and they're gun owners. They would like to fill out something that says this guy shouldn't have a gun.
If doctors think that you're a threat to yourself or others, they have a responsibility to report it. Yeah.
But that doesn't always lead to an arrest or a charge that would prevent you from getting a weapon.
That's absolutely right.
Because you need reasonable cause and probable suspicion.
That's right. Because
probable cause and reasonable suspicion. Yeah. I'm trying to interwind all of them. But I still, we're gonna move on to the next part, but I still have a problem with being able to just meet somebody at somewhere and exchange weapons like that. There's no bill of sale. There's no registration. There's nothing. You don't know where these weapons are coming from or where they're going. To me, I think that's one of the things that I have a major issue with. And obviously, if you're in Texas, you can easily find something on Craigslist or Facebook before they take it down and meet somebody and purchase that item, and there's no way to trace it back. And we used the analogy of a car before, but again, the car is registered, and the person using it usually has a license. It's supposed to, but that doesn't go along with an AR-15 or handgun or rifle or shotgun of any kind.
Supposed to, but I mean, you said the magic word, supposed to.
Then again, that varies on where you are, because in some states you have to register every single gun you own.
Yeah.
In California, you got to take a picture of the gun and submit it to them. So, but then the problem is that does that solve crime? Crime
is going to happen regardless, but will it cut down crime? We don't know because we haven't tried. But
we have tried. We had an assault weapons ban for 10 years.
Yeah, and those, it's not a relevant sample, but there were a lot less mass shootings during that period. That's a fact.
The overall crime rate had been decreasing steadily before that. National Institute of Justice did their study about 3 years ago, and they said that the assault weapons ban did nothing. It had no no measurable effect.
But there were less mass shootings at that point.
But
There was still Columbine right after the bill passed, but they did dip down. The number of deaths from mass shootings did go down, period.
When you look at a statistic like that, yeah, okay, you're right. But I think, again, in the general population, Joe Sixpack, he's not going to hear that. He's not going to see that. He's not going to understand that. He's going to say, this is an ongoing problem that's been going on since Columbine or even before. So I don't think that's, again, an answer.
I'll state my position and then we'll move to the parenting issue because I see that pop up a lot. I personally don't understand why you don't need some type of education to buy a weapon. If you're going to drive a vehicle, you have to take classes or pass two tests minimum, the computer test and the actual drive along with the state trooper or whoever it is. In order to get your license, they check your eyes, all that stuff. With weapons, you don't have to go through that. You can fill out the background. You get the gun. You don't have to tell the government what the serial number is. There's no identifying features of owning a weapon.
Again, that depends on the state.
Well, I'm talking about Texas. We're in El Paso, so we're going to stick to that. And you're in El Paso, right? You're Texas. So we'll stick to that because we don't get that many listeners from Oklahoma or whatever. But that's the fact. That's the way it works right now. Anybody can buy a weapon as long as you're 18 or appear, if it's a private sale, as long as you appear to be 18, because I'm sure a lot of these people aren't checking IDs or anything. And in your hypothetical, you even mentioned like, oh, I don't know if you look that age or whatever. I mean, that should be common sense to most people is that you check ID. I can run background checks on my phone. I had a different career before, so that's why. But for me, it's a matter of being the responsible person if you are going to sell weapons. And obviously, there's going to be people that are selling those weapons because they're trying to get rid of them for a reason. They're trying to get rid of them quickly for a reason. And that I have a problem with. I don't think there should be private sales of those types of weapons. I can see handguns and stuff like that, but I just, again, I have an issue with that particular type of weapon. I think they should be harder to get, so either education or registration of the weapon and no private sales. That's how I feel about that.
You want all of ours? You want to move on?
Well, if you guys have anything.
Moving on. Let's move on to the parenting and the discipline and the reasons why behind these shootings. So immediately you hear school shootings, and it's always typically another student or a student in that demographic. And so right away out comes the video game, it's too violent. Out comes the music. Out comes they were dressed in goth and listening to Marilyn Manson. There come all the reasons why this individual, mental issue, and of course discipline from parents. All those things get involved and thrown into the conversation. So what's your take on all that?
I think it's a big factor, but again, it's one of many. And a lot of these...
Which one? Which factor? All of those that I just mentioned, or just the parenting?
No, well, if everybody's going to lump parenting into one of the causes of this behavior. This guy was an orphan. His mother had just died. His father died many years ago, and maybe he had a troubled childhood and this and that. Obviously, that's going to be a factor. And I'm not a psychologist or anything, but I study behavior. But I can tell you that parenting, the way that you parent, is not everything. So a lot of these people that, like, for example, the Las Vegas shooter, his father was a bank robber, a psychopath pretty much.
Right, yeah.
Right? But his father didn't raise him. And he was raised by his mother and his brothers. And as far as I've read, his lifestyle was fine. His upbringing was fine. However, because his father showed that type of behavior later in life, I have the assumption that that issue was more genetic than environmental. I don't think it was the way he was raised. I think it was something that mental illness caught up to him at a certain age. It was genetics, and it manifested at that time when he's older, and he was probably going through some hard times with loss of money and things like that. My point is, you can't just say it's how they're raised. That's a bullshit argument.
You know, maybe if he would have been slapped around a little bit when he was growing up, that has stopped him from...
And again, studies show spanking and physical punishment increases aggression in children, increases antisocial behavior, weakens their cognitive ability. And there's studies that show this, many studies over the course of decades. And if you tell some people, I did that today on Facebook, you tell people that, oh, no, that doesn't matter. I mean, if you're going to deny science, I can't help you. And I'm not trying to change anybody's mind, but the facts are a lot of people that have children will say, oh, my kid is great. My kid is perfect. It's these other people that are fucking up.
Yeah.
No. You don't know what your child is going to do when they're 30 or 40 or 50, and you might do the best job possible, provide them with the best nutrition, the best exercise, and the best education. You have no control over everything. You're just, it's not going to happen.
Well, Charlie, what do you know? You don't have kids.
Exactly. I've heard that before. You don't have kids, so who are you to talk? I know enough about antecedents, behaviors, and consequences. And I can tell you, we can go into a whole 2-hour show about that. I don't have kids because I choose not to have kids. Okay. And it's because I don't have time. I don't have the patience. I don't like kids. I've worked with lots of kids every year. I used to work with a couple hundred every year. And kids with behavioral problems and kids that are going through illnesses and kids that have social skills that lack, all sorts of kids. So I might not be an expert, but I can tell you if you start to say, well, this Nicholas guy, it was the way he was raised, I'm pretty sure it's not.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure there's a lot more to it. It's environmental. It could be an event-based issue that happens, some type of trauma. His mother just died recently of the flu. That could have pushed him over the edge. His father died when he was younger. That could have manifested now because of all the pain and anger that he's faced.
Was he bullied? I missed a lot of what happened, or I've missed a lot of his background or whatever they've been talking about him. Was he bullied as a child, or was it at the school? Was he a bully?
I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Is that also part of the factor? Or is that going to be a reason now or an excuse?
Well, the bullying is one thing. I mean, I was bullied horribly when I was a kid. Okay, there was 2 guys that would walk behind me on the way home, walking home by a canal. At one point, they would kick my ass all the time. At one point, one of them pushed me into the canal, and they both started peeing on me, and they wailed on me. I also had an abusive father that was physically abusive. I had issues that went on when I was a child with attempted suicides and physical violence and domestic violence, all sorts of. I had a horrible upbringing, and that's part of the reason why I don't want to have kids, because I have other priorities. I don't want to bring a child into the world. I don't think I can commit to it, and that's my decision. It's not. Some people say, "Oh, you don't have a kid, so you don't know what it's like." I know exactly what I was like because I was a kid at one point. I was in that environment. And I have probably have some of those genetics, and that scares me. I saw the way my dad was. I don't want to give birth to a child, and what if I have to deal with a kid that grows up in that aggressive manner? So, again, most of the people that tell me I don't know what I'm talking about are usually parents that weren't expecting to have a child. So you tell me that. Mm-hmm. Because you didn't plan that child. You just ended up with one, and all of a sudden you're parent of the year.
So now, so blame the music then. Blame the video games. Blame violent. And I love the video game argument because I saw that on Facebook 2 days ago, and I had to laugh. Because I remember being a kid playing Pac-Man and Asteroids and all those other great video games at an arcade, and people saying that's going to be the downfall. Yep. That's going to be the downfall of society's video games and shooters at that time. Now, granted, the graphics are nowhere near as real as they are today. And as a kid, man, 9-year-old me is screaming how great these graphics are. But that's been the argument for 30 years. Music. That's been an argument probably since music.
I think that video games and movies and television and music, I think a lot of times they do desensitize us to violence. I think it's one contributing factor. It also depends on the person, the individual themselves, to be able to distinguish the difference between real and not real.
Yep.
It's also genetics. It's also the way the parents engage with their children. All of that are things that matter. But I do, when I was a kid, I listened to the Ghetto Boys and Marilyn Manson and 9 Inch Nails. Well, not so much 9 Inch Nails, but Marilyn Manson. I listened to Sepultura, to Deicide, satanic music. And I watched a lot of Faces of Death, Traces of Death, which is actually news footage that never made it on air, real people dying. And a lot of that did desensitize me. I saw a lot when I was a kid. I saw people die in front of me. In real life, I saw people die in front of me. And I had a friend of mine that killed himself in my apartment as an adult, and I saw the body. I found him. It's a number of things. But to dismiss video games and music, again, you're missing it, because it does have some type of influence on behavior. It does.
Can we flip it around and say then it's not so much maybe the upbringing, but it's still the parents. It's still the parents' discretion to say, what is it you're playing? What is it you're watching?
If you're watching them all the time, that would be great. But how many parents are really watching their kids all the time?
Well, okay, so not even all the time. Charlie has a parent. You don't know Charlie. You're not a parent. But even if you start one time and say, what are you doing? And you lay that ground rule, and you lay that ground, what are you listening to? Let me hear it. Okay, well, that's cool. It's got a good
think that's
beat.
important. If I had a child, that's exactly what I would be doing.
Or what movie are you going to go see? Yeah, Terminator. I would take it from Terminator.
I would take the computer and their iPad and everything out of their room, and they have to use it in the living room so I can see what's being looked at. There's a reason why we don't want our children to cuss or watch certain movies. Obviously, there's an influence to behavior based on that. But to say, oh, it's not the movies, I can tell you, I was a product of that. It did influence a lot of behavior. It desensitized me to a lot of violence.
Influence, but not reason. That's not the reason why. This kid didn't go shoot up a school because he listened to
it's
NWA.
not going to be and that's the conservative argument from many years ago with Dick Cheney and his wife trying to ban certain music, and when they were trying to ban Two Live Crew and all that. This goes back decades. It's not going to be the sole factor for these crimes or for this behavior, but it does add to it. That's the fact. If you were to walk out and a car shouts at you for no reason, you're going to think about that a few seconds later. That's going to influence your behavior. Maybe not now, but maybe next time you walk outside and there's a car passing by, you might anticipate somebody yelling at you. And that's the same thing for music and movies, is that it might not push you over the edge. Most normal people won't be pushed over the edge by just that alone. But again, you have environmental factors, you have genetics, you have the environment itself, and then you have the downside to it, you have the accessibility to commit harm. If you make that accessibility easy, you're going to see more mental health crimes, more violent crimes. That's the truth.
And so let me, again, playing big dumb guy against you. So if I'm constantly watching Terminator and Rambo, and am I dating myself with these movie references? All these
Ben-Hur.
Yeah. If I'm constantly watching this, then the answer would be mix it up with some lighthearted family stuff. So it's not just the one movie genre, the gore movies that everybody saw and all that. Then and I'm pleading this out to everybody else as well. You can't take away one style of movie or one style of video game. If I'm sitting there playing Call of Duty and then tomorrow I play Mario Brothers, I'm not going to go run and hit myself on a brick wall hoping a coin pops out.
I think it's a matter of the individual. If you have a child or even an adult that uses these graphic movies or video games as an outlet for stress, that's when it's going to compromise you even more. If you can play these video games if it's a social behavior, if you're inviting people to come over, or you're playing online and you're playing, the most violent games out there and you're having fun, obviously you're counter conditioning yourself and desensitizing to that. But if you're using that as just the release, I don't want to be around my wife, so I'm going to go play these video games, and you're doing it while you're angry, that's a problem. Because you're starting to separate yourself from the real world and trying to get away from the real problems and trying to hide yourself in this fantasy world with guns and violence. That's the big deal. And the same thing for music or television or whatever.
Let me up you on that one then. What about VR? As virtual reality gets better and better, and now I'm literally surrounding myself in this world where I can run around and shoot somebody.
Again, and how many people are going through that and they're getting desensitized where it becomes as easy as pretending I can shoot somebody because I've done it here. And again, if you're doing it as an escape, that's where you're in real danger. And that's where parents also have to talk to the kids. Why is this kid playing these games all the time? Sometimes 6 hours, 12 hours a day? That's not healthy for you. And if it's something like a family, some type of like night out, game night or something like that, and have fun and watch horror movies and stuff, that's a big plus. That's what you want. That's what the movies are made for, entertainment, not an escape. I know plenty of people that are obsessed with Halloween and skulls and bodies and all that stuff, but they know how to turn it off. And that's the big part. But to say movies and video games don't have anything, that's false. That's just completely false.
I've always had issues. A little side note: I've always had issue like on Facebook when the parents dress the kids up like Chucky and stuff.
I think that's cute.
It's adorable.
What do you think, Barry? I mean,
it's adorable.
What do you?
So, let me. I am a parent, and it wasn't too long ago when my son, who's he's 8 now, he wanted to watch The Walking Dead. Mm-hmm. He didn't really know what it was, but I see he had heard something about it. He wanted to check it out. And he asked me about it. Well, actually, what he did was ask me where it was. Like, was it on Netflix? Is that where I can... And I said, well, are you sure that you want to watch this? Like, this is what it's about. It's violent. There's going to be people getting hurt. Are you sure that you think that's appropriate? You think that's a good idea for a kid your age to watch something like that? And he looked right at me and he said, Dad, it's just a TV show. It's not real.
Exactly.
And so I think that a lot of what you're saying is very true. Like, if you use it to desensitize yourself so that you can just kind of like use that as your way of dealing with your problems, then it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
But as long as there's that really consciousness, conscious recognizing of the fact that it's not real. My son, he likes to play Call of Duty, but he wants to play with me. He wants me to come into his room and sit down and play, and I think most of that is just, he just wants to hang out, and that's great. I'm all for it. I'll sit there and play Call of Duty with him for 6 or 12 hours a day. No big deal, because it's time with him. Yeah, it's probably not the best. We could be outside playing catch or whatever. Do
a sit-up now and then.
But I think that's, the point there is that unchecked, it's a problem.
Yeah.
But if you, talk to your kids and have those conversations and, really understand what's going on, then you can really mitigate that, that risk.
I used to do that with Theo constantly when he started getting online and playing games online, whether it was a Call of Duty or a Grand Theft Auto or a Minecraft or whatever.
Theo is his
my son. Just I thought he assumed
some kid I found at the park,
and I'd bring him over and we'd play. I'd go through his friends list and he'd play online because like I said, 36 years back there was no online for us. But I'd go through his friends list and I said, "Who's this?" And I said, "Can you have lunch with him?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Who's this? Can you have lunch with him? No, he's interested. I said, "No, he's out."
Yeah. No, he lives in whatever country.
Yeah.
Like, nope.
Out. And I think he's kind of learned from that a little bit as well. Even if it's 6 hours spending time, at least he's with people that were school buds or whatever.
Yeah. Exactly. It's
it's in the application.
Yeah.
And how many of these kids are playing video games for 6 or 12 hours? Unsupervised, with no interaction from
Home Alone. Period.
Yeah.
Number one.
Yeah, and that's the problem. The latchkey kids, where some parents will use the video games or the internet, the computer as the babysitter. And sometimes even the schools. I mean, they'll take him. Hey, he's going to be here for several hours, and I'll go do what I got to do.
That's a whole.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying that's not an issue. Obviously, it's important. But there's so many different issues. It's not just the parenting. You can raise your kid the best way that you possibly can, provide them with the best environment, the best nutrition, best exercise. Exercise is important also.
Yep.
It increases serotonin. You have tryptophan, complex carbs that increase serotonin, and that helps you to relax. And that's going to combat any excess adrenaline and cortisol that's going to get you all stressed out and anxious. Exercise creates dopamine, what gives you that relaxed feeling, and endorphins, which is the body's natural painkiller. So there's a lot of body chemistry going on. It's not just the way they were raised.
But then there's always that cuckoo crazy factor that's going to say, yeah, no, that's not how it works, though. And I take it back to Las Vegas shooter. You had said yourself, this guy had a pretty decent upbringing.
He was a financially successful man. He was an assertive and successful man.
The cuckoo crazy factor just says, you know what, though?
At some point,
This is
something
different.
just happened.
Yeah, the wild card
Yeah.
factor, if you will.
And again, that could have been triggered by some environmental change in his environment that pushed him over. And it could be a chemical imbalance, and it could have been genetics. I seriously, from what I've read, I feel that that was a genetic issue. A lot of people that people spoke to that knew him couldn't comprehend how this guy would have done that. There were no warning signs. This guy from the Florida school shooting, everybody was like, this guy was an asshole. This guy was a sociopath. And from what I had seen, he did have a history of bullying other kids. He was an angry person. He wasn't a victim.
He got expelled for being violent at school.
He was a violent guy. And again, how much of that is parenting? It could probably be parenting issue, or it could have been just him learning on his own, environmental changes, things like that. Again, we're not going to solve the problem by banning a certain gun. We're not going to solve the problem by... I wish we could make people take classes or a test to have... children, but that's not going to happen.
And the other thing that you brought up, you need to have at least 2 different types of tests to get a card, to get a license. Not to get a card, but to get a license.
Yeah.
I would even expound on that and say, that only happens once in your lifetime, though. You only take that test one time. I think there needs to be a driving test every year.
Unless you reach a certain age. And then they have to recheck your eye vision, and then they'll actually make you take the driving portion a second time.
And that's where I go back on what Barry said, because there's a lot of people on the roads right now who don't know how to drive. Well, I got my license. I'm
good. And a lot of them have Las Cruces or New Mexico plates.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I would even expound on that and say that needs to be done.
You're right.
Once or twice a year.
Also. Yeah.
So you're listening to Stay Tuned El Paso. Vic, Charlie, and Erica. Barry's been our guest this afternoon, and we said it when we started. And I think we've just kind of sort of proven it. There's no real answer. There's no one end-all beat solution. And I think the monster of itself has become so big that we cannot slay it. This thing is too huge as far as who's to blame, who's to take care of, who's to fix the situation, what's the right, correct way to do it. Because when you start even talking about mental health issues, then we have to go all the way back into the medical community and say that whole thing needs to be completely changed.
Oh, yeah.
100%. Insurances need to be completely changed.
That's something that our country has failed a lot of people on, is the mental health, the behavioral health and mental health care. People still get ostracized if they say that they need help. It's hard to get actual insurance companies to pay for some of this help, and then on the other side, it's 180 degrees, because we live in a society that likes to brag that they're on medications for behavioral issues. I have PTSD, I have OCD. They brag out of it, but how many of those people are actually diagnosed? Probably none.
And treated properly. Once you're diagnosed, get the proper treatment. I mean, that's just, we failed. We failed there in so many ways. There's just so many ways that when the system works the way it's supposed to work, it's great.
Yeah.
It's granted, it's the best system that there is. But the system is failing in many, many aspects. And I don't think there's one quick, simple solution, a magic wand to wave it over. I think personally, my opinion, we are well and far beyond any type of change or reform for semi-automatic weapons, access to, rights to have. I think it's now just growing in and of itself. It's not up to the government to decide. No, it is up to the government to decide. It's up to the schools to provide some sort of protection for our kids.
If I can jump in and say that what I've heard from pro-gun supporters saying we should let the teachers arm themselves is one of the stupidest arguments that I've ever heard. I don't know if you agree with it, Barry, but I think that's one of the stupidest arguments. They don't get paid enough to teach. We shouldn't put that burden on them to have to take the work of Congress or law enforcement officers.
The best thing I saw on Facebook regarding that was somebody saying you can't even give them enough equipment to teach.
Right.
How can you afford
They were
to
about
give them?
Well, then I would say no. We shouldn't require teachers to be armed.
Well, not require, but
That's the thing. If your state allows, Texas allows me to have a concealed handgun, and I'm a teacher, I should be allowed to have it with me at the school.
I don't. Two things. One, if my children are going to your class and you're armed, I want to know about it, and I want to have the right to remove my child and take them to a different class. So that's going to complicate issues already. I don't think we need to militarize the schools, especially elementary schools and maybe universities, maybe colleges. Those are grown-ups for the most part. They don't have the cognitive ability fully formed until they're 25. But really, with children, I wouldn't feel comfortable encouraging people to bring their weapons if they're teachers. Number two, we already have a major issue with teachers making bad decisions with the students. The last thing, no, seriously.
No, I know.
You have all these sexual advances towards kids and child molesters.
You need to give them a gun.
We do not do a good job of screening these people. And again, if you're going to screen people and do background checks, they have to have a prior conviction to actually fall into that category. A lot of these teachers don't, and they don't get caught because they're grooming children and they're doing this and that. So I would not want to bring weapons into the school knowing that that's still a big danger to the children.
Bottom line is that there's no real safe. Do you post a military vet, somebody outside the doors? I've seen that also. Get a veteran out there armed all the time.
I wouldn't do that either.
As a security guard.
I wouldn't do that. I don't think the children need to see that. Again, we're talking about society. We're talking about social behavior. The last thing that you want is children to be walking into school seeing people with guns because other people with other guns might come in. I don't think more guns is going to be the answer when it comes to these mass shootings. You're going to have to address it from all different angles. And I personally would homeschool my kid if schools actually became that way. It's just not right for children to see that. There's just way too many questions that they're going to have to normalize the fact that we have somebody with a semi-automatic weapon standing in front of our schools every day. That's just not right. That's part of the desensitization process. You're just not good.
Before we close off, let me just say something really quick. Not that we're thanking, but let's actually just take a moment and look at very responsible, law-abiding gun owners like Barry. I'm not. No,
I didn't check
Let me do a background check.
Yeah. I'm surprised it took you this long to start running it.
Did you pat him down, Vic?
I told you
We
not.
did not.
This guy.
Like he walked in, Aloe sniffed him. He was okay.
Actually, she didn't. So we put away the
we
box
put
saving
her
dog.
before.
But no, in all seriousness, let's actually take the time to see those people for what they are, and they are law-abiding gun owners. They're responsible, and we're not vilifying everyone. I mean, you guys are well within your rights to own your weapons, and you are responsible. You are not shooting up places. You are using them for what recreation or whatever sport you're involved in, and that's great. And that's it. Like, kudos to you guys, and that's great. And I wish we had more of that than what we're seeing. But
we do have more of that.
And I know we do. I know we do. And I'm not trying to in any way take anything away from you. Before we close off, I just wanted to make sure, good for you guys. It's great to see. And it's refreshing to see that there are people like Barry that know the ins and outs and everything about owning their weapons. It shows the responsibility that some people do take when it comes to owning their weapons.
Or and I'm going to add in, or in any profession, or group or whatever. There's always going to be that wild card,
Always.
crazy cuckoo factor.
Always,
Doesn't
yes.
matter what it is you're doing. There's always going to be an individual. Does that mean that individual in a radio
Represents
station,
everyone?
yeah,
Right.
No.
in a radio station is going to go shoot up the building? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that there's always that wild, cuckoo, crazy card that is going to be in that. What did you find?
Barry's birth date is close to Halloween.
It is.
So, yeah.
And
Anything?
yeah, no.
Good guy?
Looks good so far.
Want to bring him back?
Yeah.
You come back?
We'll probably have him back.
Okay, good. You're listening to Stay Tuned El Paso. Barry, I hope we didn't beat you up too much. I hope you don't feel that way. And obviously, as more, sadly, the sad truth about all of this is it's probably going to happen again. And it's probably going to happen again sooner than we realize.
And if it happens again, we have the right person to call for the show.
So I hope you come ready to be
on
ready to be here
standby.
next Monday, next week. We'll see you next
Well, then
month.
I hope I never see you all again.
You're listening to Stay Tuned El Paso. Charlie, Vic, Erica. Thanks, guys. See ya.
You are listening to Stay Tuned El Paso with Victor Cruz and Charlie Moreno.
The best thing to happen to El Paso ever.